Good evening and welcome to this Wednesday, February 28th meeting of the Richmond Advisory Plan Commission, which is now called to order. Would you please call the roll?
Lynn Clark,
Here.
Michael Devine,
Here.
Matt Evans, Joe Price,
Here.
Greg Steens,
Here.
Rob Tidrow,
Here.
Gary Turner,
Here.
Tiana Washington, Bruce Whistle.
Here. We do have 7 members present. Is the petitioner here? I do want to make you aware that it does take 6 votes in order to pass. It's a majority of the makeup of the commission, which is 11 members. 2 positions are vacant, and we have 2 absent tonight. So I will ask if you want to continue. Okay, thank you. Members should have received the minutes of the meeting of January 24th. Do we have any corrections or additions? If there are none, I do have one correction to make, which I did watch the meeting on TV. On page 4 of the minutes, about a quarter of the way down, it has in here that the petitioner stated that the cottages would be a bit smaller at about 1,000 to 14,000 square feet. I believe that's a mistake, and 1,400. Okay. So I do ask, when you make a motion, to include that correction in the motion.
Mr. President, I move to approve the minutes, noting the correction that you've made as an amendment to it.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes with the correction. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, there is no need for publication in case you have an agenda and following the meeting, because this is a continuation of a current issue. Under old business tonight, we have Ordinance 2, 2024, which is the petition of South 37th Street Properties, LLC owner, 11th Street Development, LLC agent, requesting a combination of medium-density, single-family residential R2, high-density, single-family residential R3, urban residential, U or R, and intense multifamily residential M2 zoning designations for a planned development to allow the creation of a mixed residential neighborhood project in medium-density, single-family residential R2 district on 5 parcels currently addressed 0 Southwest 37th Street, Richmond, Indiana. Is that Southwest 37th Street? Southeast.
South, 37.
South, yeah, okay. Parcels IDs 8918-023-00-102-006030. And I'll give the last 4 digits of the rest of them: 5030, 7030, 1030, 8030. Legal descriptions: point northwest section 2-13-11-184A, part southwest section 2-13-19-1, 9.256A, point southwest section 2-13-1, 21.405 acres, point southwest section 2-13-1, 2.56 acres, point southwest section 2-13-1, 5.006 acres, and point southwest section 2.13.1, 40.21 acres. Okay, we've already had public hearing on this, so there will not be a continuation of public hearing tonight. We have always allowed the petitioner to address after public hearing, so he can address any issues that may have come up during the public hearing section, and offer any other suggestions that he might want to add as far as trying to accommodate changes. This isn't an opportunity to do a selling point. We just want the facts. So at this time, we would invite the petitioner and his group to come up and discuss any changes from that or any explanations as to what occurred.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Brian Stumpf with 11th Street Development, and glad to be here tonight. We appreciate the opportunity last month to present our project, and tonight we'll be focusing on the change that we've made to the plan development ordinance and just address some concerns that were raised at the last meeting. Just as a brief refreshment, the land is currently zoned R2, so it's allowed and planned for residential uses today. It's 80 acres. South 37th Street was developed for this future development. I do want to point out that the entire project is market rate. We've heard some concerns about, well, what if it's not market rate? What guarantees do we have in there? One of the items, and I've provided Dustin a copy, is that in Section 3 of the plan development, where under concept plan, will identify that the real estate within the district shall be developed into and used for market rate housing consistent with the concept plan attached here to as Exhibit B. And this is what you're seeing in that exhibit. So as R2, this 80 acres could be developed just as single-family lots, all the same, and that would not be in the best interest of the community. Our goal in looking at this, I'm a planner by background. I look at what does the comprehensive plan say, what does the Rising Richmond plan say, and we see the need for housing at a variety of different price points. So we're using the plan development process here to provide flexibility in the lot size so that we can offer 5 different living arrangements. The apartments are very important to the site. I'll get into some of the details about that in a moment. But again, these are and will continue to be market rate apartments. They're financially important to the project, and they are a feeder into the single-family homes. We view them, my goal is that everyone's in the apartment, that's great. They're coming to Richmond, that's where they land. They land in the apartments, and they are there while they build their house here in Smith Hill. We also have the 4 different single-family home collections that we discussed at the meeting last time. I'm excited to say that we've made good progress with a multifamily developer for Subdistrict E. This is a conceptual plan that was created by their engineer for this site. And with this, the plan here is that this northwest corner of the site is 10 buildings on 11 acres. So some of the concerns with the density and how it's going to be solid buildings and so forth, you'll see we've got a lot of open space and the arrangement of the buildings upon the site. And working with them, saying, look, give me your realistic number. What is the range of units you're going to put on there? They are looking at no more than 220 units. So one of the items that we're proposing to change in the plan development is that the number of units in Section 5.5 be changed to the total number of dwelling units in District E cannot exceed 250 dwelling units. So that's one of the items that we're addressing in the planned district ordinance. The other part is the base zoning district. The PD ordinance identifies the base zoning districts. That's MR is our default. What didn't get captured in the PD district is that allows a 4-story or 60-foot tall buildings. That's not our intent for that in corner at all. And so one of the items is that a commitment and text into Section 6.1 of the Plan Development District that identifies that the buildings within the subdistrict E cannot exceed 3 stories in height. And then there were concerns about the daycare use. One of the things that we've had, this is a completely residential proposal, except for a desire. We often see a need for daycare, childcare with residential. So we'd like that opportunity to have that. I understand the concerns that were raised about, okay, well, wait a second, is that a Trojan horse that, you're going to get this commercial use in here and that might extend throughout the 11 acres? That is not our intent. The daycare would be permitted only in the sub-district E that you see on the screen, and that it cannot exceed 2 acres in size. And that's one of the other items that we added into section 6.1 of the ordinance. So this isn't going to lead to other commercial, that's just that use. I do not have a daycare that is currently interested, but it would pair well with the residential of the community. One comment that we received from the multifamily developer is we're showing both entrances here on South 37th Street. They would actually be interested in moving that northern entrance, instead of having it there, having it over on Garwood Road. That is something that, I don't know, that will be something that we will be doing a traffic study as part of this process, and that was something we'll let the traffic study dictate the appropriate location for that entrance.
Pardon me, Garwood? You mean Bachmar?
Bachmeyer, I'm sorry, Bachmeyer.
Yeah.
My apologies.
All right.
I've been dealing with the eastern side of the site recently. My bad. Bachmeyer Road. So over here in this area, that side. So so this is the concept plan with the multifamily, possible multifamily site laid out, shown on the concept plan. And so this is how those work together. There is, part of that separation is along the lots and in between, we currently have a slope that's there that has trees on. We're trying to maintain that slope. We're trying to work with the existing topography as much as possible. Utilities came up as a concern, as often is the case. The concerns about traffic, as I mentioned before, South 37th Street was actually designed to handle future development. Believe me, it's an amazing road compared to usually, often it's a narrow 2-lane road that we have. So this was developed or constructed to anticipate the development of this area. Also, as I mentioned, we'll be doing traffic studies as part of our future approvals, and those traffic studies will identify the improvements at the entrances and other locations to minimize the impact of the additional cars on the community. Our engineers have been working with the utility providers, sanitary, sewer. They have adequate capacity to serve this and the ability to serve this project. Water is one that, again, there's adequate capacity and the ability to serve the project. One thing I know, water pressure has been raised as a concern. Currently, the water system out there is not looped. They're just single dead-end runs. This project will loop that water system as it goes down South 37th Street, and that will help with the pressurization in the area. Stormwater was also a concern that was raised. Gordon Moore is here and can address those concerns. I've spoken with Gordon about the requirements for the stormwater. Post-development, because of the requirements that are in place, post-development, this site will have less runoff at a big storm than the current conditions today. And that's because of the detention that's required. We have over 6.5 acres of detention shown on the plan. And these detention in the stormwater system will capture that water and release it slowly. And Gordon can talk to the ability of the ditch to handle the water as it leaves the site. We'd also received some questions about the project value. What does that mean for the city and its property tax? So looking at the different collections of homes and the apartments, we're looking at about a $96 million value of the project when it's complete, which this is napkin math, but would be looking at probably $1.3 million a year in tax revenue to the city. And
Excuse me, is that
Yep.
just city tax revenue? Or is that doesn't include the schools or?
yeah, I was just looking at the municipal
All right,
side of
thank you.
things.
I'm sorry.
And its ability to generate tax revenue. So again, this is just some relatively quick, trying to get looking at the assessments and so forth, but just trying to give a sort of magnitude of the project.
Okay, thank you.
And really with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Questions for Mr. Smith?
I have a question.
Okay.
Yes. I one of the biggest issues is the density, and that probably points to the apartments more than anything else. Is this an all-or-nothing project? Could this be done if that stayed R2 profitably for the developer?
It would make it difficult because of the cost of development nowadays and simply also the velocity of the community. That's part of the reason that we're seeking the diversity in the housing product, because if we're selling one type of home, you're only going to sell so many of those. But if I can offer different homes for sale, that helps with the sales velocity in the community. So that is, the apartments are an important part.
What will your street widths be?
The street widths will all follow the city standards and their requirements.
Well, that would be 24, I assume.
Well, I believe it's a 50-foot right-of-way, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Dustin, but.
Well, 50-foot right-of-way, but 24-foot width on the street. But I'm just thinking it might be very helpful to have a little wider street as your main
Yeah.
entrance.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And what we're looking at is having well, I guess my overlay kind of cut this off, but over on the entrance, having a median there as well to help with some of that entry point. That's always nice to have that. We view the main entrance is over on South 37th Street, so we always like to do a boulevard entry in there. So we've got that separation of the entrance points. We will also have acceleration and deceleration lanes that will be there at that location, as well as passing blisters for southbound traffic on South 37th Street.
Are those all going to be retention, or will some of them be detention ponds?
They'll be wet ponds. I'll keep it simple. It's in terms of I can understand. They'll be wet ponds, and so they'll have water all the time.
Okay.
They are part of a network. We will have a homeowner association that will be cover the site. I haven't worked out the full details of whether the apartments are their own association or not. At a minimum, we will have, whether they'll be part of that homeowner association, we've done it both ways. At a minimum, there will be cost-sharing agreements and maintenance agreements between the two entities to make sure that the ponds are maintained in perpetuity.
I have a question.
Yes.
Doesn't have to pertain too much to the zoning part of it here, but I think there were some serious questions about the safety of the ponds. Have you in the past put any type of fencing around these ponds or anything?
The answer is no. Sometimes there may be like bollards or things if it's near a street. But overall, in working with emergency responders, they actually don't like fencing around the ponds. It can impede their ability to get to a pond when there is an issue. There's also the way that the ponds are designed. They have a safety ledge, so you come in off the edge of the water, the normal pool of the water. That first 10 feet or so is actually relatively flat and shallow, and then the pond gets deeper after that. So there are elements to the design of the pond itself to make it safer should someone fall into the pond. But it's been interesting because I've actually proposed fences before and been told no by the emergency management people because of the difficulty in accessing a pond when there is an emergency.
Okay, other questions? I think you said you had Mr. Moore coming up too. Was he going to address?
You can.
Can I ask you to remove this? Good evening, welcome home.
Thank you.
Gordon Moore, Wayne County Surveyor, and I'm not here to recommend approval or disapproval of the project, just to address the drainage itself. I know there's been concerns about two ditches, but one is a Scott ditch, the other is a Quig ditch. Both of these are assessment ditches and controlled by the Wayne County Drainage Board, which is the Wayne County Commissioners. I have met with the Richmond Sanitary District engineers, which is Elijah Welsh and Gerald South, and at our last month's meeting with the Drainage Board, we addressed this project, and we really don't feel that there is concern about overloading either one of these ditches. Scott Ditch has the watershed of approximately 95% of this project. The southeast corner of the project would drain into the Quig Ditch. I don't see that happening, though, the way that this design is. We started out with 6 ponds, now we're looking at 8 ponds, but I would almost assume that all of those would be discharging into the Scott Ditch. But the reason that we're not concerned is because of your UDO that you adopted years ago. And I've given you copies of that UDO. And if you would go down on the stormwater standards and go down to D, proposed drainage facilities, subsection E, drainage facilities shall be designed where there will be no increase in the peak discharge runoff rate after construction. And I know you've all heard this before, but we cannot increase the rate of flow, the velocity, or the volume at all. It has to be exactly 0 or less, and that may be the possibility here with the amount of green space we're looking at. But it has to be maintained at a 0 rate, and that has to go through the approval process of both the City of Richmond, the engineering department down at the Sanitary District, and through the Wayne County Drainage Board. So we'll both have the opportunity to review the construction plans and either approve or disapprove, but they have to meet this criteria. On the second page on water standards E, and I think this is essential, is as-built drawings of each phase of all the drainage facilities shall be submitted to the Public Works and Engineering within 6 months of the completion. You will have bonds issued for the infrastructure, which will include these detention basins. So if these detention basins or any part of the stormwater system is not constructed in compliance with the approved plans, then we have the option to make that happen, or the city has the option. The county can't enforce that, but the city has that option. And there are penalties included in that. So if you go back to the homeowners association, which I think is critical on this particular project, and you go down to D, 1 is retention pond drainage systems. When a retention pond and/or other drainage systems are required or installed, the city shall not now or in the future be obligated to accept them as public infrastructure or to maintain these facilities. This will be the responsibility of the homeowners association, including those in the proposed apartment areas as well. So if there is a problem with the retention basins, if there is a fault with them, if there's maintenance problems, then the city has the right to go in and require them to repair that and bring it up to standards. Now, I think there's been discussion about the Scott Ditch. We have done a lot of repair to it in the last 2 years. We've removed a lot of log jams, sandbars. Thank goodness we don't deal with beavers in this particular area. It must be the residential neighborhood like we have in the county. But we think that if they maintain these standards and the city requires them to keep the upkeep of these retention ponds, then we shouldn't have any issues with the flow into Scott Ditch or into the Quig Ditch. So if you have any additional questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I have one question. Is the Scott Ditch, in your opinion, adequately maintained so that it, in fact, will maintain the flow that is necessary?
I'm sorry, what was the first part of that, Michael?
Has it been maintained? Is there enough of the debris cleared from that ditch in order to flow properly?
There is and will be by the time this construction phase starts.
Okay.
This assessment ditch, they hadn't been collecting on it for a good number of years. I think it was 2 years ago we put it back on the assessment rolls.
I'm paying up for it.
And every lot in that watershed, the smallest lot, the smallest part that we're collecting is $5 per lot. But we're trying to build that fund back up to make sure that we can maintain this ditch in the future.
Yeah, the last night's rain was a test.
I bet it was. I
Yeah.
bet it was hit hard, yeah.
Yeah, we had 3/4 of an inch rain in half an hour
Right.
in the middle of the night, so it was pretty brisk. So it seemed to have managed that flow.
As the gentleman spoke before me, you know, your hard surfaces, your asphalts and rooftops and so forth, concretes, You know, that has the most runoff, and then it drops down to farmland. But down lower than that is residential lots and lawns. So some of this will be maintained on the residential sites themselves. And then as he spoke about 8 retention ponds, we're just not accustomed to seeing that in our areas. But they'll have a freeboard in those that will allow that water to rise and fall, and won't be able to discharge it into the ditch until it reaches predetermined elevations that we are going to control.
I have a question.
Yes.
You mentioned the Quig ditch. Where is that?
Big ditch runs down Garwood Road and goes over to Industrial Road roadway.
Thank you.
It's on the east side of Garwood Road. That's the Quig ditch. But the watershed, part of that takes in the southeast corner of this particular site.
Okay, thank you.
Gordon, all these houses will become members of your club, won't they?
Yes, they will.
Paying into the ditch?
Absolutely. Every
what I thought.
single home there
Right.
will be assessed and sent the $5 fee, yes.
Other questions for Mr. Moore? Thank you, Mr. Moore.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else from your team that has anything to bring up? Okay, thank you for your presentation. Is there any changes from the staff recommendation since the last meeting?
Staff still recommends approval.
The next thing would be, Ms. Vessels, you had followed up from the previous meeting on talking about the apartments and possible amendment to make sure that they stay at market value apartments.
Correct, and I do have a small correction to the wording. I won't read the whole memo, and I apologize because I didn't know you were going to be back tonight, so I sent the correction to Mr. Turner.
Uh-oh.
So I'll just read that into the record real quick if the board doesn't mind.
Please.
I make so it's a comprehensive motion that could be phrased as follows: to make a motion that the Advisory Plan Commission make a recommendation to the Common Council, first, that the proposed ordinance 2-2024 and its exhibits be amended by council to reflect that the petitioner agrees to make a voluntary commitment to place language in the development's recorded covenants, provided that the apartments constructed shall remain market rate units in perpetuity, and which covenants and commitments shall run with the land. And second, with this recommended amendment, that if any provision or the application of any provision of this planned development ordinance is held unconstitutional or invalid by the courts, the remainder of this ordinance or the application of such provision to other circumstances shall not be affected. So that's a proposed motion if anyone would like to make that as presented. And then I sent the language to Dustin and Joanne and Gary. But as I read it into the record with those corrections, that is something recommended by law due to some concerns which came up. Do you have any questions?
Good. Mr.
Any
President, would you
questions
like a
on the-
motion on that?
Motion?
Would you like a motion on that?
If any discussion on it? Chair will accept a motion.
So moved. I'm not going to read it again.
Okay,
Presented.
As presented.
your motion and second was to accept the recommended motion proposed by the city attorney.
Correct.
Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none? It's now amended or recommended amended, I guess, ordinance. It'll still be up to the city council to decide how they want to handle that.
Mr. President, and I do believe that would be incorporated into the Plan Commission's report to the Common Council.
Thank you. Okay, we're up for discussion by the board.
I have a question for Dustin. And what I'd like to know, I mean, I recognize as the part of the Plan Commission, Advisory Plan Commission, this Phase 1 zoning issue is strictly a non-binding vote that advises from our perspective to council. But council, Common Council, of course, has the opportunity, the authority to approve or not approve this Phase 1 change. When it comes to Phase 2 and 3, I understand that there is time limits associated with coming to this commission with Phase 2 and Phase 3 of the project. How is that handled from a legal standpoint?
Sure. So, yeah, if Common Council votes to approve this first phase, which is the district ordinance and establishment plan, the petitioner then has 2 years to file a detailed development plan, and that's the second phase. And then there's also the possibility for a one-time 6-month extension. But if after that period of time, the second phase has not been filed, this would then revert back to its original R2 zoning district.
That answers, yes. Thank you.
Are there questions or discussion?
I don't have a question, but I do know that it's important I think it's important for people to realize we've just gone through a process in the county to rank probably 80 or 90 projects for funding through this upcoming federal grant program that may yield as much as $100 million in Wayne County for a variety of projects. And this particular project was ranked #1 among all projects in Wayne County. And so from my perspective, to even consider not to allow it to move forward enough that it can address the details of the final plan and assure us they can or cannot meet all the standards that we have would be the wrong thing to do and the wrong thing to show the world beyond our boundaries about our city. So I'll be voting for this because it's a process that, like Dustin said, will probably take another couple of years for us to get to the point where we absolutely know what the constraints will be that they're going to have to work within and what impacts they may have to mitigate going forward.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Other comments? I would like to address a few things. As pointed out, I was not at the last meeting, but I did watch it all. And I think there needs to be a better understanding about the role that government plays in this. I heard at least one suggestion was, well, there's other places where we can put it. You know, and that's not legally within our preview to look at. We can only look at what comes before us. You don't want government to telling you what you can do with your land. We're only there to say, whoa, wait a minute, can't do that. You know, that's our role, is by doing that. So this is the petition that we have before us to look at and make a judgment on. There was some questions about whether this was a viable business concern. Are people going to pay those kind of things? That's another thing the government doesn't look at. Business makes business decisions. We make decisions based strictly on land and whether it's suitable for that interest. The concept of the multi-zoning has been adopted by the city on 2 separate occasions. Under our old zoning back, I believe it was in the late 90s, we adopted the PUD, the Plan Unit Development, under the old code. And then when we developed the new ordinance, which was, what's that, 2008, 10? Okay. We incorporated in our UDO, which is our zoning code that we have now. So on 2 separate occasions, this body has recommended and City Council has adopted the idea of various levels of zoning as far as housing, how many people in each district. So that's not a new concept. And in some of the larger communities, it's been going on for years. I think, Gary, you were planning director in Johnson County in the 70s?
Yes.
And you had a plan unit development at that point.
Several, yes.
So it's not a new concept, not an experiment that we're working with here. I I feel very comfortable with this. It's a huge investment in the community. I know that we have a real need for the housing at all levels, and this is addressing all levels. So I do plan to vote for it. Any other comments? If not, the chair will accept a motion at this point.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to accept ORD 2-2024, including the motion that we had made.
Okay, that would include Ms. Vessel's motion, and then there was, we do not have to make any requests for the changes in the apartments, because that's already been stated, right?
So it's made a part of the record. Common council would have somewhat of the ultimate authority over conditions and commitments. So that is made a part of this record, though, tonight.
Okay, and same with the daycare, the limiting it to 3 stories high and 2 acres, okay? And the market rate commitment for those.
I think
Okay.
you need a second. Second?
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to make the recommendation along with Ms. Vessel's amendment. So would you please call the roll?
Glenn Clark,
Aye.
Michael Devine,
Aye.
Joe Price,
Aye.
Greg Steins,
Aye.
Rob Tidrow,
Aye.
Gary Turner,
Aye.
Bruce Whissel.
Aye. So it does pass with a favorable recommendation to the city council, and I believe they'll be hearing it at their March 19th meeting, right?
18th.
18th?
Yes.
March 18th?
And that will also be a public hearing.
And there'll be a public hearing at that point in time. Okay.
The deadline to get on the March 4th agenda was actually today, so we couldn't submit materials prior to this meeting taking place.
So we'll be March 18th then.
That's right.
Okay, any other business come before the commission? If not, Chair will accept a motion.
Make a motion to adjourn?
I second that.
Have a motion and second to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.